Hi, I'm Tim Gillingham, your host for Gold Tips Arrow University. The subject today we're going to cover is hunting arrow selection. Now, with all the offerings available from Gold Tip for hunting arrows, many of you get a little confused as to, what should I shoot? What's better? Should I shoot a Pro Hunter? Should I shoot an XT Hunter? Maybe a Velocity is better for me. Maybe I should shoot a Kinetic. Or what about those cool Ted Nugent shafts? Okay, we're going to cover these one by one and kind of give you a little bit of idea, how to choose the most optimal hunting arrow for your situation. Okay, one of the first criteria that you want to take into consideration is what type of hunting are you going to be doing? Am I going to be shooting whitetail deer? Am I going to be shooting elk? Am I going to be shooting long range, or am I going to be shooting short range? That really has a lot to do with, what type of arrow I would particularly choose for my setup. Am I going to be shooting a fixed blade, or am I going to be shooting a mechanical broadhead? Those two come into that situation. A lot of these bows today will shoot, 320, 330, even 340 feet per second. In that situation, you probably don't want to shoot a mechanical or a fixed blade broadhead. You want to choose a mechanical broadhead. Myself, personally, I prefer mechanical broadheads. There's some very good mechanical broadheads on the market, and I have learned to trust them very well. One of the things that they allow me to do is run a smaller vane, much flatter trajectory, much more accurate at longer distances. Okay, so if I'm an average whitetail hunter in the woods, what am I looking at? I'm looking at an arrow that's, I need to be really, fairly quick. I'm sitting in a tree stand primarily, or a ground blind. I'm ranging spots that I may or may not know the exact distance. So I want to keep my speed up a little bit. I'm dealing with a jumpy animal. I want a fairly quick arrow. I also want a quiet arrow. Okay, quietness is something that's really overlooked from the hunter. So you want to be able to try to, use those different criteria to establish, hey, what is the best hunting arrow for me? Now, the majority of what Gold Tip sells, is, the main line, the Pro Hunter, the XT Hunter, and the Expedition Hunter. And for 99% of the hunting in the world, this shaft is adequate and probably optimal. It's probably the best balance in weight and speed that you're gonna find. Now, whether you decide, am I gonna shoot a Pro Hunter or not, is probably based on more economics than anything. Or are you a guy that wants to really push the level of accuracy? You want to shoot really long distance. You want to get the maximum amount of accuracy you can out of your setup. If you're that guy, then you're probably going to want the Pro Hunter. They're weight sorted plus or minus half a grain. You're able to buy them dozen by dozen by the weight, so you can really match that weight, quite well. You're going to get a good finished arrow that's going to shoot up upwards of 300, 320 feet per second based on the amount of poundage you're shooting. Make sure though that you do pick the correct spine. Use your spine charts like we've taught you in previous lessons to pick the correct arrow. That's going to be very, very important. The black shaft, the black shaft's available. We do have camouflage shafts available in the Pro Hunter, XT Hunter, and Expedition Hunter. They tend to run a little bit more expensive, but a lot of guys like them. They match their bows, or they like the camo shaft. The camo shaft is a little bit heavier. Keep that in mind when you do pick your selection. If you got the desire to run a little bit heavier shaft, you can get that same extra weight in the shafts that you currently use. So different configurations that are available. The standard nock that comes with the Pro Hunter and Expedition Hunter is the GT nock. Now you can run the Aculite nock in the Pro Hunter, XT Hunter, and Expedition Hunter. It's a short nock, very durable in a hunting situation, very accurate nock, and my nock of choice, for my hunting use. If you're shooting groups a lot with your hunting arrows and you're damaging a lot of the backs of your arrows, one of the solutions to this is to run a pin nock setup like this. Notice I have an HD pin nock on this pin nock setup. This is going to provide lots of durability to the end of the shaft, replaceable nock, so I'll bang the nock. I might bend the bushing here or there, but I'm going to protect the end of that shaft. Okay. Another option is a unibushing. We have a unibushing option similar to this one on the Kinetic that's available in the Pro Hunter line also. So if you like a G-Nock style nock like this F-Nock and prefer that type of nocking system, it's available for you in the XT Hunter, Expedition Hunter, and the Pro Hunter line. So that's another option available to you. Moving on to the next line of shafts is we have the Velocity line of shafts. The Velocity line of shafts is our lighter weight line of shafts. If you look in the Target line, you'll see that it's pretty comparable to the Ultralight. It's basically the same shaft as the Ultralight geared up for the bow hunter. It comes with a push-in Aculite nock and an Aculite insert. So you don't have to buy the components ahead of time. Now this is available in 5 different spines. You have a 600 spine, very popular with the women and light poundage kids when they're starting out, 500s. We have the 400 spine, a 340, and also a 300 spine. The 300 spine is only 8.5 grains an inch. So you get a nice stiff arrow, lightweight, and it makes a very good hunting arrow. Again, you can configure this with the same nocking configurations that you run in the Pro Hunter. You can run a pin nock, you can run the Aculite, the GT nock, or you can run a unibushing with a G-nock style nock. Now moving on to the Kinetic line. The Kinetic line is simply just a smaller diameter shaft, okay? A little bit smaller diameter, a little bit better for longer range accuracy. It just seems to, it's heavier, it doesn't slow down as fast at distance. If you're looking for more mass weight, longer range accuracy, the Kinetic might be the arrow for you. If you're a long draw length guy like myself, in the Kinetic line we make a 200 spine arrow. Now for a lot of people they might think a 200 spine arrow, well who can shoot a 200 spine arrow? Well, if you look at the spine charts, you'll see that guys that are shooting 75, 80 pounds and arrow lengths approaching, 29 to 30, 31 inches, the 200 spine arrow is the arrow that
those shooters are going to want.
Same thing with the Big Game 100 here. Big Game 100 is a niche shaft similar to the 200 spine. It's a 250 spined arrow, 10.2 grains an inch. So you get a shaft that's really stiff for the guys wanting to run a lot of, heavier poundage. And that's something that Gold Tip offers that not a lot of other companies offer. So, it doesn't matter. I think diameter and weight is not what people think it is. The attributes of diameter weight really come into play at longer distances. Mass weight is the key for long range accuracy. Mass weight is the biggest thing that's going to help you in the wind. But again, when we go back to our penetration video, we don't want to compromise speed too much. Speed's going to be one of the biggest assets to you in making good shot placement. Not necessarily if you're sitting, in a blind or you're only shooting 20 or 30 yards off of a food plot or something like that. But, if you're a Western bow hunter and you're spotting and stalking, speed's going to help you quite a bit. Now we have also several, different colored shafts in the lineup that a lot of you might like. I know a lot of the ladies like the Ted Nugent in the pink, and this year we have a new Name the Game arrow, okay? This is, in cohesion with Gold Tip's Name the Game TV show. The main host for that is Levi Morgan, and this is an arrow that we designed specifically for him. And some of the proceeds do go to some different foundations for all of these arrows, including the Ted Nugent and the Levi Morgan arrows. So there's a lot of options there in different colors. A lot of the traditional guys like these arrows too. They're kind of easy to find when you're missing targets. So the goal is not to miss any targets, but they are nice and easy to locate if you do happen to miss a target. The traditional shaft that we have here is a wood grain looking shaft, very popular with our traditional archers, of course. It's just really an aesthetically pleasing shaft and really complements a good traditional setup. They are a little heavier too, so traditional guys shooting a little bit less poundage, they're going to benefit more from a little bit heavier of an arrow, and it's already pre-engineered into this so that they don't have to add extra heavy inserts or the weight systems, but that is available to you also. Okay, but don't overlook the ability to use some of our target shafts in hunting applications. Some of the best fixed blade broadhead accuracy that I've ever got is with an arrow like this Ultralight Pro X Cutter. I've shot fixed blades very successfully, and there are inserts available for these arrows so that you can use them in a hunting scenario. This particular arrow, the 22 series, is a 300 spine arrow. It's only 7.3 grains an inch. So if you want a very fast, very lightweight shaft that's going to have enough spine to handle your 70-pound bow, this might be an arrow that you might want to choose. Okay, on the subject of choosing a correct hunting arrow, when we establish what type of broadhead we want to shoot, that has a direct implication onto what we're going to have to use in vanes. One of the criteria that determines, my particular hunting arrow is how much noise does it make? Am I using a broadhead that makes a lot of noise? I test all this stuff, okay? A fixed blade is going to make a little bit more noise. It's going to require a little bit more fletching on the back of the arrow, so therefore it's going to make a little bit more noise. So therefore personally, I like mechanical broadheads. A lot of my mechanical broadhead setups, I'll run a broadhead or a blade or a vane similar to, say, this VaneTech Swift vane. It's smaller, it's lower profile, it's a little quieter in the air, and it doesn't create as much drag. But on the other hand, if I'm running a fixed blade broadhead, I might need a vane configuration similar to this 4-fletch 2.5-inch vane, or a higher profile 2-inch HP that most of your standard hunting arrows come fletched with. The larger the vane is required simply because we have more broadhead to steer. You'll notice most traditional archers are going to want feathers. They're going to want a bigger fletching to correct their mistakes. They're letting go with their fingers. They don't have near as clean an arrow flight as, say, a compound bow with a release. So all these factors come into play. And one of the reasons that I choose a particular fletching pattern is based on the broadhead. If I'm running a big fixed blade broadhead, I might need to run a 4-fletch pattern like this 4-fletch Blazer here. And in the past, I found some of my very best fixed blade broadhead accuracy with that. The downside of that is I get a little bit more noise. So do some experimentation with vanes and your broadhead combinations, and look for your optimal results, and those criteria you're looking for are, a quiet arrow. You want an arrow that's not planing on you, that gives you really good accuracy, and the best happy medium in all those aspects, for you to achieve optimal results. So. Okay, a lot of times, archers think that just, that smaller arrow is the best arrow for penetration, or, hey, I need this particular arrow for this reason. And a lot of times, they misinterpret actually what's happening. Personally, I think that the 5/16 diameter arrow that you see in the XT Hunter is about the best happy medium for dissipation of energy and tunability. And let me kind of illustrate what I'm talking about here, okay? Let's take this target here, and we'll kind of give this the illustration as it's the arrow. And let's say, for example, the 10 ring on this particular target here illustrates the kinetic arrow. It's smaller diameter. And let's just say our string diameter is represented by these two lines, okay? Now, let's say this is our string diameter, okay? What we're trying to do when we tune an arrow is we're trying to line the string, the power stroke of the string up with the center of the arrow. And the smaller we make the target, the more critical it can become in tuning and in forgiveness and things like that. So a lot of times, by going to a slightly bigger diameter arrow, we can be a little bit more off-center over here, and it's not going to affect the accuracy of the arrow, as it would if we were on the smaller arrow and the string hitting it, that far left or right. So it's kind of a small analogy that I use in some of my illustrations to show, that maybe one of the reasons that I found such good broadhead accuracy out of this Ultralight Pro X cutter with a fixed blade was the fact that it's larger diameter. It recovers faster, it's more stable, and maybe it's just simply because it presents a larger power, a larger target for the power stroke of the string. I sense that in a lot of my competition shooting, that the larger arrows that I shoot are a little bit more forgiving, and I think maybe you'll find kind of the same results as an archer. So, pick your favorite arrow in the gold tip lineup. You all have your reasons. Maybe you like the Ted Nugent for the color. Maybe you like the Pro Hunter just because you've always used it. And it's just a world-class arrow shaft that's won a lot of the major tournaments in the country. Just an award-winning line of shafts. Anything you choose in the line, I think you're going to have really good results in the field.